If I was going to share one thing that happened to me that made me realize, that just gave me unwavering faith, it wasn't long after my dad died. And it was the first time I was with my stepmom, who was in the car with him, the love of his life. And we were on the beach. There was hardly anybody out there. It was a weekday, and a whale just started breaching out of the water, just leaping and leaping and leaping for joy. It was just such a joyful thing to see. And I heard a little voice in my head that said, "It's me." And I looked at her and I said, "It's Dad." And she said, "Of course it's your dad." And then
Welcome to the Wise Old Soul podcast. My name is Lee Chandler and I'll be your host. The Wise Old Soul is the wise old soul in each and every one of us. On our podcast, you're going to meet some fabulous guests that are going to share their old souls, which in turn will awaken yours. And today I'm blessed to have Jill Stein Clarkson with us, a medium that specializes in prenatal as well as dragon energy. Very excited to have you on the program today, Jill. I am just absolutely amazed with everything that you've done in your life. It's just fascinating, but I'm so excited to get into the meat and potatoes of this idea of being a prenatal spiritual medium. How did that all happen?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was a journey, that's for sure. So since I was young, I was in the event industry. I was a DJ, and then I was a wedding planner, and then I was a bridal show producer and a business owner for my entire life. And right around my 30s is when my spiritual journey began. And that's a long story. I'm not going to tell my entire life story, but as far as the prenatal mediumship piece goes, I was taking psychic development classes because I knew I had a calling to help people in some way. I was thinking I might be a death doula, and I had been a hospice volunteer, and I was very comfortable in that world, and that was why I was taking these psychic development classes. And during one of these classes, one of my teachers said prenatal mediumship, and my whole body just started to tingle. And I actually had a vision of myself working with a mentor in another life, learning how to do that kind of work. And so I just it just kind of turned on a dime. And not long after that, I was taking a class at the back of a bookstore on death. And when we introduced ourselves, it just came out. I said, "I'm a prenatal medium." And there was a little bit of buzz, and everybody was asking questions, and it just unfolded after that. Even that night, I had an experience when I went out to dinner that just told me I was headed in the right direction. And I even went to Africa and met the woman that was that mentor in my other life, which is a whole other story in itself. But yeah, so that's how it unfolded for me. And what's amazing, the journey's been so amazing, and I've had so much fun connecting people with the souls of their babies when they're expecting. But I'm finding that the people that are finding me through referrals are people that are on a fertility journey. I have worked with several couples to help them connect and conceive. It's really exciting.
So to me, it sounds like, Jill, you started at one end with death. Mm-hmm. You moved into prenatal. Mm-hmm. With this, I'm really getting a sense that you've learned to trust. That's a huge word, to be able to trust what you are to do. Would that be in alignment?
What an amazing observation. Because yes, it's such a journey. And I think for anybody that's thinking about being a spiritual practitioner, all of us really, no matter what we're doing, but especially people in this type of industry, do have to trust where they're being pointed. And I think that the people that you're meant to serve, they're the people that come. And rather than being inflexible and saying, "No, this is what I do," or not having that broad open mind, the more of an open mind we can have as we're moving forward, the easier the journey is. Because then we can just go with the flow and help the people that come before us and say, okay, so this is kind of where it's leading now, with curiosity. Yeah.
And so it's all about serving. And I also know that you started a charity and have been working in Uganda. It's now growing into India. Tell us a little bit about
charity. It's not my charity, Lee. I support this charity, but it's not my charity. It's just like my child. It's Vivian Glick is the founder, and I traveled to Africa with her, and we worked in Uganda with the girls there. But it is an amazing organization, and they help girls, and they take some boys through the program as well. But they teach these young people how to fight against violence. And it's helping to curb young marriage and young pregnancies, and helping these kids stay in school and just realize there's a different way of life. And they're working in India now too. And it is an amazing organization. And I had the privilege of getting to go to Africa and work with these young people that are in the program with her. Super sweet.
You're using the privilege of working with these people. I've been blessed to have a charity as well, where we build homes for the poorest of the poor in Cambodia primarily, and a little bit in Thailand. And the sense I'm getting is you get the same satisfaction as I do, but more importantly, each and every time we go to these countries to make a difference, we're never the same people when we depart. We change fundamentally in the core. It's not noticeable on the outside, but we really do change when we serve the people.
Yeah.
And so now on the prenatal mediumship, you're continuing that servitude. You're giving to these people. You're helping them, especially in the fertility side. My goodness, that seems to be a very challenging time for a lot of people right now, is to be able to have babies. Maybe you could walk us through a little bit about that.
I love talking about this part of my work because the readings I've been doing are they're so neat. And you mentioned being in service to the people, and I love being in service to the people here on the planet, but I also feel like I'm in service to the souls as well that are coming through. And for example, my very first experience with helping a couple conceive, it wasn't even a plan. She was taking me through a visualization, and I met a soul that was coming through as a very, very old man. And I found us right at the portal to where souls come in. And we walked, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I'm afraid to be young again, because I had a really rough childhood in my last life." And as we walked and talked, he got younger and younger. And he finally said, I think I'm ready. And so when I came out of my visualization with this woman, I said, "I'm just curious, are you trying to have a family?" And she told me, "Well, we tried for a while, but we're thinking of adopting now." And I said, "Well, there is a soul here for you." And the next time I got on a call with her, I said, "What are you celebrating?" And she said, "I'm pregnant." And it was just so sweet to get to be with that soul that was wanting to come, but needed a little support. And it's just all in the moment. It's not even something that I was expecting to do. And I have a lot of families that come to me that have already had kids that are wondering if they should have more. Because in this day and age of enlightenment, I think a lot of couples they feel the souls with them before they come. And some couples are thinking, well, we don't really know if we want more kids, but we feel like there's another soul for us. Or is there? And every story is so different. And I love the peace of mind that I can bring to these people and giving them some guidance around that decision.
The soul is choosing to come, that you're picking up on, but at the same time, the parents are sometimes sending that message out to that soul. Yeah. A symbiotic relationship. And again, absolutely, we're bringing in that famous word, trust. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And allowing the couple or the people that are wishing to have that baby to trust that intuition, to trust that message you're getting from that soul.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of trust for them, I think, to believe somebody that they're talking to about what the messages are that are coming through. And it's so different every time, from there not being another soul, the work that's coming through for them, to, oh yeah, she says you can make decisions all day long, but she's showing up. So it does take so much faith. As with any work like this, that's just the word, because as a healer, I think it takes so much faith knowing that you're making a difference, even though you can't see exactly what's happening immediately. You're just trusting that the work you're doing for somebody is good and is doing good things for their life. And as a medium and a channel, you have to learn to take out the filter and just let what comes through fly, because sometimes it makes no sense whatsoever. And you'll get a validation that, oh yeah, that does make sense to me. And sometimes you don't, but you do just have to know it takes practice. It's one of the things I teach when I teach my potential practitioners about, are they ready to start practicing, is, well, have you done it before? And have people given you feedback that you're doing something that's making a difference to them and helping them? And that's how you know that you're ready to start actually practicing. Yeah.
Fabulous. What a gift. Jill, can you talk to me and the people that are listening a little bit more maybe about those that are having a challenge conceiving for whatever reason? I think we've all met people, and you had an example of someone earlier. They had tried several times. They maybe went through the medical system and they're just saying, hey, I guess it's not meant to be, but we'll adopt. And so often I hear, when someone decides to adopt, bingo, all of a sudden they're pregnant. But maybe walk us through what it's like to work with somebody that's had that challenge of being able to get pregnant.
And I've worked with so many, from, we're using our last embryo next week and we want to have a reading beforehand, to, we've been trying so long and nothing has happened, and what should we do next? What is it going to take? And honestly, Lee, every couple's story is so different. However, I do think that talking to somebody like me calms them and also makes them not feel like they have to have as much control over the situation. They're realizing that there's another party involved, the soul. And when they can learn to communicate with that soul and have somebody act as a go-between, they can get amazing messages that kind of have that same effect of making the decision to adopt, which is the relaxing and the letting go. And so often that can be what's keeping conception from happening. So I think every situation is different. I know I'm saying that a lot today, but it is such a thing, the fertility journey for people. And it can be so heartbreaking when things aren't happening when they want it to happen. But to meet somebody like me that can say, I'm really feeling like this just isn't the right time, and kind of give them a time frame of when I'm feeling like things are going to happen. It's not just me predicting that, but it's also the calmness and the peace of mind that comes from hearing that. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong here just because it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming, or whatever the message is. But it has that same effect of letting go and faith. Here we go with that same word, right, Lee? That faith word. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So I appreciate all of those things that can happen. And then we've got the other extreme, Jill. We have people that are able to conceive. They have a child, and all of a sudden there's a complication. The child, they miscarry, a stillbirth. That's got to be challenging, but there's still got to be a connection, I would think, with that soul that was in the body. There, a lesson maybe, or somebody who really wasn't ready. What have you experienced with those families?
So much richness and so much beauty and love with people that have had miscarriages. I've worked with women that have had abortions, and the making that connection and getting some clarity is so healing. And I think, honestly, I've learned so much from working with women that have had miscarriages, especially around learning what can happen when a baby is in utero. Because I worked with a mom who was just about to give birth in a class of mine, and she had had a miscarriage. And the soul came through and said, I never had any intention of being born, but I came to heal my mom's body so that she could have my little sister.
Wow.
I've also spoken with souls that miscarried that also said, no, I really needed to give her wisdom and downloads, and it was so much easier for me to do it this way than to just be a guide for her whole life. There's that connection when they're connected, literally, that can create such a powerful opportunity to do so many things. And so some of the work I've done around babies that didn't come all the way has just been beautiful. And I had an experience in Africa about this, because when we were in Africa, we visited a hospital, and I got to go to the maternity ward. And the right side of the room were for moms who were having their babies or had had their babies, and the left side of the room were for the women that had lost their babies. And everybody was so up in arms about the fact that they were all in the same room. And I walked down the one side, and as I turned around to the other side, there was a woman sitting on the edge of a bed. And I looked her in the eye, and she smiled at me. And I just felt a connection with her around the fact that whether a soul comes and lives for a few months in utero or 90 years on the planet, they've still lived a full life. They've still accomplished, they've still learned, they've done what they came to do.
Here in the Western world,
So
I
different.
find that we are so locked into the medical side of things. And God bless the medicines that we do have. Thank goodness we have them. There's a time and place for everything. Yet, listening to your story of Africa, it really sounded like these women understood that everything was in perfect order for them. What happened was meant to happen. I'm sure they're disappointed, but at the same time, it almost sounds like they're still extremely happy for their sisters on the other side of the hall, or the other side of the room.
I think so. I think it is different there. And I think, everybody that had come from this side of the world, they view it the way everybody views it here. And I could just feel to my bones that the attitude was different, that there was more faith and knowing, and who knows, maybe relief. So a very different feeling. Same thing at the same hospital. When we pulled up in the bus, there's a building out front, and right across the building, right in the front of the hospital, it said morgue. And I thought, it wasn't hidden in the basement, right, trying to keep everyone there from knowing what might be coming. It's different. The view on death, it seemed very different to me.
Sure. We all end up there at some point from this physical incarnation. Whether we come back again or we've been around a zillion times, we can have lots of discussions about that. But I absolutely adore the stories and the things that you tell us, and the gifts that you've been able to share with these women, and I'm sure with the men as well. This is not easy for a potential father either. Is there anything that you're able to share with everyone about how you deal with the masculinity side, the father? Is there a different way to handle it? Obviously, men have a tendency, and I'm stereotyping, but we don't show emotions. We're stoic sometimes. it's got to be just a heck of a ride for the potential father.
I have to tell you, the men that have come across my path are absolutely amazing. I have had so many couples come together, and the love between them is so beautiful, and the support, and getting to communicate with the incoming soul, or the soul that's potentially going to be the baby, and talking to the baby about mom and dad in two separate conversations. You know, it's one session, but let's talk about dad now, and let's talk about mom now, and just learning about the different connections and how they're connected and how they're excited about each one and who they're going to be like in certain ways and how the relationships are going to be different. It's just been absolutely magical. I love the men that I've gotten to work with. And to your point, I would love to get to work with more men around that pain, because I think it would be so healing. And like you said, they are so much less likely to seek out help. Whereas, you know, a mom ends up in one of my classes and she will open up about a miscarriage or an abortion. And whereas, you know, the men, not so much, because even though they were such a huge part of it, the woman is so the focus that I think the men need to know that they have a right to also step forward for healing.
Mm-hmm.
And that they deserve that. And I don't think that's out there yet. So I love this inquiry. Something to think about.
Great. Well, hopefully there's some men out there that will hear this and resonate with that and be open to it.
Yeah.
So Jill, tell me, you meet these souls, you connect with them, and these souls, is there any karma that's connected to the husband and wife or the couple and the incoming baby or babies that maybe they have been joined in a past life or somehow joined as family members previously?
So in my experience, and I would not be surprised if it ends up happening, I haven't actually had any situations where, at least not that I can remember, where the incoming soul was a recent ancestor. Mm-hmm. But I definitely have had situations where, yes, the family circle has been together before. I've had mm-hmm. information come through about what their relationship was to each other, which is so magical. And especially siblings. I have a lot of energy around the work around siblings and what they're going to be like as siblings and what they've been like before in other lives together. So amazing. So yes, the karma piece a little. I don't do a lot of karmic work, but I do in my readings that I do, sometimes just my general mediumship readings. So often something will come through, especially in a situation where somebody needs healing, as to why. It's something that happened before in a life, and the other souls that were affected by that thing will show up and give me information about what the occurrence was and why we need to do healing around it. And that can be really, really special. And I do a lot of that kind of work too for women that are trying to conceive, so that we can do some work around their body and any energy that needs to be cleared.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I know that you have a great website, and I'm just going to mention that, which is jillsteinclarkson.com. You've got a huge amount of information that people can take a look at, which is very exciting. But shifting from the prenatal mediumship, I know you do work with dragons. Talk to me about dragons.
Dragons are so great. Dragons. So, I want to start this because so many people, when they hear about it, they don't even know what to think. And I love to start with my story about how I met my first dragon, because I was in the morning. I didn't know about dragons. And then in the nighttime, I had my own dragon and I was already communicating with dragons. So I was at a conference and I went out to lunch and the woman was telling me how she worked with dragons in the dragon realm. And so I asked her some questions. And then on my walk back to the Airbnb where we were staying, I heard in my ear, I am Landon. And that's the day that I met my dragon. And I started communicating with him and immediately went out and got Diana Cooper's book, Dragons, read it from cover to cover. There's ceremonies in it. You all are going to love this story. So I'm reading Diana Cooper's book, and there was a ceremony in it where you could print out and color in a map of Africa and light a candle and do a ceremony to send the dragons to work in Africa to help heal the land. Within the next year, I was physically in Africa with the dragons working on healing the land. So it's amazing what can happen when we give ourselves to being in service to whatever is presented before us. So the dragons, so many people know about angels. They're elemental beings. They're beings that can help you in your life. And we have guardian angels and we have guardian dragons. And dragons are also beings that can help us in our lives. And different dragons can help in different ways. And they're amazing. And just like angels, they don't have free will. They cannot step in on your behalf unless you ask. So when someone can meet me and learn about dragons and start bringing dragons into their lives, so much love. I mean, pure, unconditional, amazing love from these beings. It's so magical. And I have met some young dragon masters, some kids that are freaking fantastic. I love teaching dragon classes for kids because these kids have been seeing dragons since they were little and they know all about them. Yeah.
Versus my generation, I was brought up in the 60s where if you kind of thought outside the box of conventional religion, it was almost a taboo. Mm-hmm. Yet when we're young, very young, we're much closer to that veil of where we came from and one day where we'll go. And so you have that opportunity to connect with these young people and allow them that opportunity to think outside the box, like open up to it, versus we were somewhat stifled, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids are amazing.
So what exactly is the dragon energy? Talk to me specifically. I visualize it, a dragon in my mind now. And I can, as you pointed out, you have a dragon behind you. But there's different dragons, and there's obviously for love probably, and different energies. Do they come in different colors? Do they all fly? Do some walk? I know nothing about dragons.
I think they all fly. And yes, there's the dragons 101 are the elemental dragons and the dragons of the elements: earth dragons, water dragons, air dragons, and fire dragons. Mm-hmm. And real quick, the basics. I'm just going to give you one thing that each of these dragons can help you with. A fire dragon is a red dragon, and typically a lot of red in this dragon. And fire dragons, fantastic for protection. When you're feeling like you need to put protection around your home or you're going on a trip. Water dragons, a lot of green a lot of times in a water dragon. Water dragons are wonderful for helping you flow around obstacles, as well as helping you with health, because we are water. So much of us are water. Air dragons, wonderful to lift you above earthly matters, and also for asthma or any breathing issues, water and communication, because we speak. And then earth dragons. Earth dragons are good at removing obstacles for you and also helping you in your garden and helping you be grounded. So just to start with the four, just like Dragons 101 really quick. And then there's so many other dragons. There are dragons that are of planets. There are the archangels, all have their own dragons that serve them. And so all different colors, and it's just beautiful to connect with a dragon or more.
And so when you connect with them, obviously when we hear our angels speak in our ears, or or kind of nudge us. Landon, who's your dragon, he obviously didn't nudge you. It sounds like he arrived and went, Jill, it's me. Pay attention. It's time to grow in a new direction.
Yeah, and I have 4 dragons now. Since then, I have 4 that are with me, and yes, and they're. I'm a sign junkie. I love getting signs from all the beings and loved ones and everybody. And the day I met Landon, I said, "Well, I think you're a red dragon, but I'd love to know if I'm seeing you correctly. Are you a red dragon?" And within the next 2 hours, I was driving my daughter home from picking her up, and traffic just came to a halt in front of us. And she said, "Look at that license plate on that car in front of us." And it said, "Chill, Jill." And it was a red Corvette. And I said, "Well, not only are you a red dragon, you're a badass red dragon." Yeah.
So he lets you know. Clear enough?
Clear enough. And I love pulling dragon cards for people. I mean, I have dragon oracle cards and we pull them and they can give us messages that way, and love connecting people with their guardian dragons. It's just so wonderful.
Perfect. Now, do you take both sides of, we've talked about 2 sides of your gifts, of dragons and prenatal work. Do they crisscross? Does one ever kind of work in conjunction with the other?
You would think a little more than it does, but not so much. Of course, I have clients that are interested in both, that love both, and we'll talk about both in one reading. But I don't find that when I'm doing the prenatal work, I don't find that the dragons are particularly involved in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I was, every time I go to teach a class, I always ask on the way, is there something I'm supposed to share with the people today? And I was inspired one day to ask, who's helping who? Who's helping with what when a child is being born? I wanted to know what was happening on the other side as a being was being ready to come and be a human being. And what an amazing so many amazing messages I got from that one inquiry. And it too alone has helped with a lot of people that have suffered the loss of a child before birth. And one of the things that I was told, dragons are there for protection, but angels are there making the go, no go decision. And oh my gosh, it just brought tears to my eyes. I was so warmed. And to be able to tell a mom or a couple that had lost a baby to miscarriage is that there were angels there helping make that decision. How special. So back to your question, Lee, not a lot of crossover. Usually people are coming to me for one or the other. And I teach classes on both. Yeah.
Sure. Now, you're also a spiritual medium. Just not the dragon side, not the prenatal side, but people that are maybe just looking for a little guidance, maybe a little insight to talk to Grandpa Joe. How did that come about? Was that the beginning, the middle of your spiritual awakening?
I would say that is, if I would have to say beginning, middle, or end, I would say end, not end. We don't want to use the word end, but more recent, because my outreach is about the prenatal mediumship and the dragon work. But I also go and I'm a visiting reader in a store once a month. So people can book readings and come to me for whatever. And in the beginning, it was kind of a little more specific. Visiting reader here about prenatal mediumship.
Sure.
But what we would get walk-ins. And I was schooled very quickly in not everybody's going to sit down and tell you exactly what they're looking for. They're just, oh, I was curious. I'd like a reading. Or I'm going through something that has nothing to do with either one of those things. And so I quickly learned that I'm just a freaking flat out medium. because as that happened, I didn't really need it to be themed. It was, I could help people with what they needed. It's interesting because my biggest challenge is when the more people ask me questions, the more my channel opens up and the more information I get from their guides or whoever it is that wants to give them information. The challenging ones sit down and say, I don't know, I was just curious, or I'm just having a really hard time right now, or whatever it is. So I learned to do scans. And so if somebody sits down and I don't know, what it is that they don't have anything specific they want to work on, I will either do a body scan or I'll do a life scan. That's my favorite. And I'll start at birth and I'll just work my way through. And I'm always just brought right to the right age to talk about. And I'll say, what was happening when you were this age? And then I'll know that's kind of what we need to focus on to help them with whatever they're going through in their life now. So definitely general mediumship is coming into my life as well. Yeah.
Part of this podcast is about the opportunity for the so many people out there right now that are just awakening. The world is awakening as much as it ever has, ever. But we're also in fear. There's a huge amount of fear on this planet right now. And those people that are looking to expand and continue their awakening, because when you talk to people, they go, I think I'm going nuts sometimes, when they have these experiences. If there's something that you could share with the audience, the average person that's saying, hey, I'm having some things happen. What do I do? How do I open up to this based on your own experience? Because I'm sure that there was a time that you may have actually kind of gone, I'm not sure what's happening, but something's happening. And maybe you had a mentor or two in your life that allowed you to open up that much more as well.
There's two kinds of people, I think. There's people that it starts happening to, either when they're kids or when they're older. And then there's people that are fascinated and love this world of spirituality and connection to the other side. That's me. And I'm sure if I had a perfect memory, I could remember things that had happened. But honestly, it was a life event for me. It was when I lost my dad that really opened me up to this desire. I wanted to be closer to death, honestly. So whether you just are interested or you're starting to experience things, either way, but probably really if you're starting to experience things, is getting in community, number one. Just even listening to this podcast. This is such an amazing start. Like, being with other people that are open and that have open channels and just knowing you're not alone. And that's how you learn kind of how it's done and how, oh yeah, I get messages that way too. You start to feel a connection. There's nothing wrong with you. You are perfect. And I'm just want to invite everybody to whatever you're experiencing or whatever you wish to experience, that you do open yourself up. And community would be number one. And then I think learning, like when you can take classes where you get to practice and you get to learn from a mentor that's been doing it for a little bit for longer. That is, I think, the second thing. And then I'm going to bring your word back into this, Lee, and I'm going to say faith and having your quiet time and trusting what you see, hear, feel, and know.
That word trust is a word that is just constant with everyone we speak with that is on this spiritual journey. Would you mind sharing with me, you touched on it, I heard that things really started to happen for you, Jill, when the passing of your father. There's other mediums that I'm aware of that had similar experiences where someone may have passed and they want closeness. They want to feel that person. They want to know they're okay. Would you be willing to share that story a little bit with us?
Absolutely. So my dad was my best friend, is my best friend. I mean, my dad he raised me. It was just him and I for a long time, starting when I was pretty young. And I even used to say, I can get over anything in a half an hour as long as nothing ever happens to my dad. And when I was 30, I got a phone call from my aunt. She left a message, and I got on the phone, and she said, your dad and Bonnie were in a car accident last night, and Bonnie's in the hospital, and your dad's dead. And I was on the floor with the robe over me, just yelling, please don't take my dad. Please don't take my dad. And the dog was barking, and it was chaos all around. And I was so lost. And so I went to a bookstore, and I went to the spiritual section, and I just stood there and said, all right, I need something. And a little tiny paperback that was called Hands That Heal by Echo Bodine lit up. And I read it from cover to cover that night. And I realized that my hands started heating up. And that was the beginning of me practicing as a spiritual individual. And I started doing hands-on healing. And I was interviewing a couple to sing music at my mother's wedding. And they had 2 seeing eye dogs, an older one that had been retired and a young one. And she went off to take a phone call. And the older dog walked up to me, and my hands got hot. And normally I would never lay hands on somebody's animal without them giving me permission. But she was blind. And I thought, well, if she walks back in the room, I'll just stop and she'll never know. And so I did. I put my hands on this dog's hips, and I got to do a healing on this dog. And, having a being just seeing that in me and walking over to me and just knowing that I could help this dog. I mean, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And that's when I became a hospice volunteer. And that whole progression led me to where I am now.
I've always believed that we're all gifted when we're born. I think some gifts are stronger than others, but the fact is we all are gifted. And tonight you shared with us your story, which is, again, learning, working at it, practicing, and trusting you have it. I think that's one of the gifts, and maybe I'm overusing the word, but sharing and allowing people to hear other people's stories really allows them permission to say, hey, someone else has done that. I can do it too. And I really appreciate the fact, Jill, that you put no parameters on it. I understood you as a prenatal medium. I understood you had experience with dragons, but I didn't know you had hands-on healing. I didn't know that, more and more spiritual mediumship of the mainstream, if we wish to call it that, is becoming more and more a part of your life. But like everything, we grow. An oak tree didn't show up as an oak tree. It started as a wee little acorn, right? And that's how it grew, and it continues to get bigger. And listening to you is such a gift for my ears. I absolutely really appreciate where you're coming from and your willingness to share all those things with us. If there was any one part of your life that you would like to share, or that would really make an impact or has made some impact on people, what would that look like?
There's so many fun stories that I'd love to share.
Sure.
But if I was going to share one thing that happened to me that made me realize, that just gave me unwavering faith, it wasn't long after my dad died. And it was the first time I was with my stepmom, who was in the car with him, the love of his life. And we were on the beach. And There was hardly anybody out there. It was a weekday, and a whale just started breaching out of the water, just leaping and leaping and leaping for joy. It was just such a joyful thing to see. And I heard a little voice in my head that said, "It's me." And I looked at her and I said, "It's Dad." And she said, "Of course it's your dad." And then we left the beach and we went to do some thrift store shopping. And we walked into our first store, and there were video games, and then there were all of those. They used to have them on the side of the road, the big posters, the framed posters, just stacks of these framed posters. And one poster had been taken out and was sitting up on a video game. So as we walked into the store, there it was. And it was that whale. And across the bottom of the poster, it said, "Rejoice."
I think your dad was jumping for joy in the ocean. It brings a tear to my eye just knowing that when we listen and when we ask for some form of verification, it's there. It will be there. We just have to look for it. And sometimes we think it's subliminal, and other times when we're not paying attention, we finally have to kind of go, "Hey," and really yell at us and make it bold and a huge statement. Do you still find right out of the blue, you hear your dad saying, "Jill"?
It's so interesting. There was a time when he was giving so many messages and we were seeing him so much.
Sure.
And then there's a time when we're not. And I've learned this when I work with people to tell them there will be times when you'll receive lots of connection and lots of messages. There'll be other times when you won't, because they're probably they're busy. They're doing things. And also sometimes, this is so interesting. They're sometimes not right away after death will they receive messages, but then after a little while they will. And I think depending on how we die, things happen as we move to the other side. Sometimes we need to rest a little while before we can start making contact. But I've also learned through the prenatal piece that the souls don't always spend a lot of time in their bodies in the very beginning. And I've been able to help some mothers that were feeling like they weren't really connecting with their newborn. And I've been able to say, well, your baby's spending a lot of time outside of its body right now, but he or she says full integration by this date, everything's going to feel a lot different at that time. And astral projection, I mean, what an amazing thing, even for babies. But just back to your point, I think it comes in waves. It's probably either because we need it, or there also is something going on over there that we just don't know about.
Sure.
But they're fine.
Sure. Yeah. You know, Jill, I had an experience with my father several years after he passed. And I too was down in the Caribbean at the time. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but I ended up walking with him outside. And when we got to the room that I was staying in, we turned and I looked in and I saw my own body in there. And it was like a lightning bolt firing me back into my body. I literally kind of, it was rather startling. As I was lying there going, my goodness, I don't know what happened. And up in the corner of my room, it's like a sparkler goes off. And all of a sudden, my father's face started to appear in that corner and came within inches of my face. And I'm lying there with tears just flowing out of my eyes. And my father said to me, your eldest brother's going to be fine. My middle brother had just gone through stem cell transplant with me, and he was going to be fine. Your mother's going to be fine. I want to let you know that I love you, because those were words that were not used in my family as we grew up. And he said, I do want to tell you, though, that this will not happen again.
Mm.
This is the last time that this will have, first and last time, but I just needed you to know this. And he faded back. And when he got to the corner, it was like that little sparkler went off again. And I remember just lying there with these tears flowing out of my eyes in the middle of the night, going, I don't know what happened. And a couple of other French words came out of my mouth that I can't repeat on the podcast, but I did say thank you. It was that moment of clarity that allowed me to know that even though my father's life near the end wasn't as healthy as it could have been, he's totally fine now, and that he knew we would be fine. And it gave us permission to truly let him go and let him be as he may on the other side. But when those things happen, you know there's something more to life than what we experience on a day-to-day basis here in this incarnation.
And thanks, Dad. Oh my goodness, what an amazing gift for you. And I love that he said to you, I'm not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to happen again, because now you're not looking all the time. You know he's fine.
No.
You'll know you see him again someday, but you're not looking all the time. You just know you can just be.
That's right. My heart was at peace.
Yeah.
My heart was at peace. So it was a fabulous gift. And so thank you for sharing yours, because it just brought that one back to me. And it's such a fond memory. Such a fond memory.
Mm.
So, well, Jill, there's so much we can be talking about. We've had this opportunity to chat for quite some time. How can people find more about you? Where can they learn what you teach? Talk to me. Tell me where they can find you, please.
Everything is on the website. If they just go to jillsteinclarkson.com, they'll see about the prenatal mediumship. They can learn a little bit about the dragons. If they're interested in one or the other, they can sign up so that they'll get emails and notifications when I'm talking about those things. And, it is my mission to normalize energetic medicine. And in order to do that, we're going to need a lot more people practicing it. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And I don't teach people how to be spiritual practitioners.
Right.
That's up to them and their mentors. What I teach people how to do is to have a business doing it and to handle all the challenges that we face that are unique business owner challenges because we're spiritual practitioners, and helping people get past the doubt and the comparison and the fear of exposure. I mean, all the things that we go through. And so this is a time when there's a lot of things available, classes. I'm having a challenge coming up soon, but on the website, if you go to the website, you get to see the different things. And so whatever you're drawn to within these pieces, then you'll probably find something that you'll be interested in. And I also have a lot of really great friends. So if we connect, then you're going to find some other paths. Your paths to your path to your path to your path can be through a lot of different people, and you eventually get to where you're meant to be.
Let me ask you two questions before we go. I would really like just your take on, why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense of why are people? Why are humans here? Why were we born?
Honestly, Lee, I have my own opinion of that. And then I also have the answer that I get when I tap in. And when I get the answer I get when I tap in, the word is love. So when you were asking me the question and I tapped in, that absolutely was the word that I was given, love. Well, couldn't we just all be on the other side loving each other and everybody would be fine and we wouldn't have to deal with any of this other stuff? So why really are we here, having these experiences we are as human beings? And I think we're here to learn. And I think we're here to connect in ways that we can only connect when we're human beings. Mm-hmm. There's amazing things that we get to experience here this is the only way we can experience them. And also, there is one person being here. So many souls can tap into what we're learning, what we're feeling, what we're doing. And so it's not just you. You're not just here for you. You're creating this thing that the collective conscious can tap into and learn from. And when I talk to my healers, when I talk to my people that are doing readings where they're healing ancestral trauma, or they're just doing a reiki healing, thousands of souls can come and be in the space and also benefit from the healing. And I think that just speaks to the collectiveness, of being here. And we're experiencing. We're here to experience. I think we're just here to experience.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if you could name one book, and I appreciate you're in the process of writing a book that hopefully we're going to see in the next year, that we're very excited about seeing. But if there's one book that you could share with somebody, say, you know what, this is one book you need to go out and read. Do you have one?
Lee, can I recommend a movie instead?
Absolutely.
Burn Your Maps.
Burn Your Maps.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I've read a lot of books I love, but in the moment, I'm just being said, no, tell everybody about Burn Your Maps.
Good. Lots of people love watching versus reading or listening. So that's wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time. Jill,
thank you.
Thank you again. I look forward to having an opportunity to speak with you again in the near future. I wish you all the success in the world. You're such a gift. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lee.